1993 saw the release of Arnold Schwarzenegger and John McTiernan's Last Action Hero. Now this was the big summer blockbuster of that year, along with another film that you might remember. But it certainly was the big summer blockbuster. It was a contender for it, and it was following up off the success of Arnie's Terminator 2. It had a budget of 85 million, and they thought they were onto a sure thing. Arnie certainly put all his energy into it, but lo and behold, they were in for a gunk because it didn't make much at the box office at all. It was a box office flop. It only took in 135 million gross worldwide, and they were left scratching their heads. It would turn out that their satirical parody of 80s and 90s action films was just totally misunderstood and somewhat offensive to the moviegoers of 1993. But alas, in 2023, the movie's 30th anniversary, I definitely think it has since found an audience, and it's certainly one of my favourite Arnold Schwarzenegger films. So to celebrate that, we're going to be looking at every home video release from its humble VHS beginnings all the way through to its 4K Blu Ray released in 2021. And of course, we'll be looking at everything along the way. So if that sounds good to you, stay tuned and we'll be diving into everything Last Action Hero very shortly. Thanks for sticking with us, folks, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Andy, ElectricGeek. If you hit me up for the first time, please consider checking out my other content. I mainly cover 4K Blu-ray reviews, as well as all other things, movies, home cinema equipment, and a bit of gaming. So please check me out if this is your first time coming to the channel. But back to Last Action Hero. So as I said in the little intro, it's definitely, I think, in my top 5 Arnie films. I think it's very intelligent and massively underrated, and probably still to this day slightly overlooked. Buying it on the 4K Blu-ray maybe about a year ago was the first time I checked it out in ages, and as well as the 4K transfer being stunning, which we'll talk about later, I was just blown away with how good it was. I remember really enjoying it as a kid, and although it's very fourth wall breaking and very aware of itself, all that stuff when I was watching it in the mid-90s, you know, like 8-9 year old went over my head, and I just seen it for what it was, a massively over the top action film on a kind of skin deep level. And so that's kind of what I needed when I was 8 or 9. I didn't really understand the full concepts of it, so I just enjoyed it as this like massively over the top action film. I didn't realise until I watched it as an adult again that that was all very intentional, and it was obviously a big parody on the kind of action genre and all the characters that Arnie had kind of played and ultimately had made him famous up until that point. There was a massive tie-in with Burger King. I think it was a $20 million tie-in, and there was a toy line as well. I remember having a Jack Slater action figure, which I totally idolised, and I remember playing with it as a kid, but God knows where that ended up, but I kind of wish I still had it. But my good mate Ellis at Total Movie Recall has provided us with this nostalgia hit, giving us a little glimpse at a Jack Slater action figure, which you can still get your hands on if you take to eBay, I'm sure. It has a massive cast in it. You've obviously got Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's at the absolute peak of his powers at the time, and this would actually be his first real flop, to be honest. I think he was quoted as saying it was kind of the beginning of the end of his career, really. But don't let that put you off. This is really, really good. It was just so ahead of its time. I mean, in today's kind of superhero movie dominated world that we live in, you had the likes of Deadpool that came along. It was R-rated, it was fourth wall breaking, and Ryan Reynolds, you know, set the screen alight, and that film was just so needed at the time. It was a breath of fresh air, poking fun at what had gone before, you know, the 20 odd kind of family friendly MCU formula movies that had fallen to that point. And basically Last Action Hero did this like 30 years ago, except people just weren't ready for it because people were still enjoying those action films, and Arnie had literally been making them for about the last, you know, 5-6 years, and people loved them for it. So I think jumping into a movie where he basically takes the piss out himself for 2 hours, kind of slagging all the things that were kind of wrong, all the kind of flaws in those kind of action hero movies, I think that just kind of offended people, and it wasn't really what they were there to see, and probably went over their heads. So I kind of get why it bombed, and obviously you also had Jurassic Park that released that year, which would not have helped it at all.
Last Action Hero and Jurassic Park, all in one picture, and this is why this is going to be the big splash and smash.
My understanding is that it had a kind of troubled production. It had an early test screen in the May of '93 ahead of its release in June, and it was not a success. People just didn't like it, kind of much like the reaction it would have when it eventually released. But Arnold Schwarzenegger and the studios agreed that they didn't want to delay it because they didn't want the public knowing that they had trouble with it and it maybe wasn't going to be all that good a movie. So they decided to stick with the original slate, which was in the summer of '93, going head to head with Jurassic Park. Universal Studios deliberately didn't back down and stuck with that slot, happy to go up against it because they obviously knew they had lightning in a bottle, and the result was a massive box office bomb, unfortunately. But that being said, it has definitely aged, as I say, so well, and it's definitely worth checking out. I dare anyone to watch this now and not totally understand all the references and really enjoy it. And the sad thing is that it's kind of lived up to its name. It really is the kind of beginning of the end of the kind of action genre of the 80s and 90s. They just don't make movies like that anymore. So if you're a fan of those movies, going back and watching Last Action Hero is a bit of a kind of, as much as it takes the piss, it's a bit of a love letter to them now that those movies aren't being made. So it's definitely worth going back and checking out, and it's rammed full of cameos. You've got Sharon Stone, Robert Patrick playing the T-1000, you've got Jim Belushi, Chevy Chase, the list goes on and on and on. I can't even remember how many. You even get Danny DeVito as an animated cat detective. I mean, what's not to like about that? So head back and just enjoy it for it is, the nostalgia, and I'm sure you'll be impressed this time around. Just before we dive into the home video history of Last Action Hero, I'll just take this opportunity to say this video is actually in collaboration with Gareth over at Video Tasties. Now, Gareth challenged me to review or compare, shall we say, the VHS against the 4K of this movie, as absurd as that is. But I took him on, and it's kind of grown arms and legs until we have the video that you're watching now. But yeah, Gareth gifted me this copy of Last Action Hero on VHS, and this is the first home release of this movie, obviously, released in 1994. You'll see that this is the Cinema Club version though, so this was like a later collection of movies that was released in 97. So this video is actually from 97, but it's got a very similar packaging to that of the original one that came out in 94. Gareth's channel, if you haven't checked it out, mainly focuses on VHS and old nostalgic movies and TV adverts and stuff like that. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely check out Gareth's channel. I've left a link in the description. And he's also having a February Arnie themed month where he does live watch-alongs of Arnie's movies. He always has different guests on, and they're a lot of fun, and he interacts really well with the comments and stuff. So if you're into Arnold Schwarzenegger and you love VHS and all the nostalgia that goes with that, then definitely get yourself over to Gareth's channel. He'll also be doing his own 4K versus VHS video. I've got a funny feeling VHS might win. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun anyway. But yeah, get yourself over, and I'll leave a link for that video when Gareth gets round to making it. But back to the VHS. So yeah, this would have been the first time you could get a hold of this at home, released by Columbia TriStar. It would have been the old 4:3 pan and scan, so most of the film, or a large portion of it, wouldn't even be visible. However, you'd just be pleased to own this movie back in 1994. Back then, you didn't have on demand and all that, so you had to wait for a TV broadcast, which might come 2 or 3 years after the cinematic release, and the videos would usually come about a year later, so it would be the only way to watch it, so you should just be thankful for having it in VHS back in 94. In that year, along with the VHS, you also got the LaserDisc of Last Action Hero. Now, I managed to source this from eBay purely for this video, just to have that prop and give you that little bit of quality in the video. Now, I have no experience with LaserDisc whatsoever, and I had no idea they were these size. I can't believe it's like a vinyl, but you get a lot for your money, and I'm really pleased to have it. Actually, I might mount it and do something with it. But yeah, really nice and hefty product, and the disc itself is absolutely massive. But yeah, this would have seen it on widescreen. I don't think there was a VHS release until much later on widescreen, so you would have got widescreen on the LaserDisc, and of course the quality would have been a jump up. I've never seen a LaserDisc, but my understanding is that it was somewhere between VHS and DVD, closer to DVD obviously, and the audio on it would have been Dolby Stereo, and that's on both the VHS and the LaserDisc, but I've got a funny feeling, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that the quality of the audio would have been better on LaserDisc. I'm sure people would have used Dolby Pro Logic back then to kind of create faux surround. Yeah, that's the LaserDisc, a kind of short-lived format that I don't have much knowledge of, but I'm intrigued and I can see myself maybe getting more. But if you're into LaserDisc or you had this movie, then please comment below and kind of help broaden my knowledge of the format. Then in 1997 we would see Last Action Hero released on DVD. Now I think 97 might have been the American release, because on the back of this it does say that it was 1999. But certainly from 1997 you could get this on DVD. This of course is the PAL UK one, and it has the traditional poster artwork on it. This would have been the first time you could have got 5.1, so just lossy Dolby Digital 5.1, but it would have been a big upgrade over the old Dolby Stereo on the previous formats, and of course you get a widescreen presentation and better picture resolution, better quality. DVD is still a format that's used today, obviously. It still takes up about 40 to 50% of the physical media market share, believe it or not. So there'll probably still be people enjoying this to this day on DVD. Then in 2010 we seen the movie released in 1080p on Blu Ray. I don't actually have the Blu Ray, I'm cheating a little bit, or not the individual package, but I do have the Blu Ray which accompanies the 4K. So I've obviously had a look at it, and you'll see in the pictures the disc, and you'll see my comparisons of what the picture quality is like for them also. It did get another release from Mill Creek in 2014, which had really cool kind of VHS style packaging, but my understanding was that it was bare bones with no special features or anything like that, and it was only available in the US, I believe. So in the UK you were stuck with this Blu-ray with the terrible artwork on the front, with the heavily pixelated and colour banded image of Arnie and the superimposed gun on the front. It's god awful, and I can't believe it made it across to the 4K one as well. Shocking. And in 2021 we of course got the 4K. So the 4K is absolutely stunning, really really nice. It's a native 4K transfer this time around, scanned I believe in 2020 or 2021 specifically for this release. We also get HDR in the form of HDR10. No Dolby Vision or HDR10 Plus sadly, but it still looks really really nice. And we get Dolby Atmos. And the Dolby Atmos is the biggest upgrade here over the Blu-ray. It's a cracking Atmos track for an older movie. Very very good, very dynamic. Lots of stuff going on in the height channels, and I was really impressed with this. It's one of the best Dolby Atmos tracks on an older film that I've came across. I mean, this film's 30 years old now. Normally they're in name only, but this is really quite impressive. And it suits the kind of big, over-the-top, fourth wall breaking, bombastic themes that are going on in Last Action Hero. But yeah, really, really nice 4K transfer. I can't recommend this enough. What I will say about the 4K transfer is the HDR grading is a lot more realistic. A lot more nuanced, not quite as vibrant. It is punchy and there's really nice use of kind of specular highlight and HDR highlights. However, the colours aren't as kind of primalistic and aren't as on the nose as the Blu-ray. So normally I would say that's a better thing, and of course you are then getting closer to the kind of how it actually looked when they were filming it and the artistic intent. However, given that this film is kind of larger than life, I sometimes think the more saturated kind of poppy colour grading that the Blu-ray has might actually be a bit more thematic for films like Last Action Hero. However, it is the kind of truest way to watch it, I would think, and it will probably be the closest to how it looked when projected from its 35mm negative in cinemas back in 1993. So I can't recommend the 4K enough, and I think it is the definitive way to watch it and definitely worth your money. I got this for a tenner and a 3 for 30, so just keep your eye out on websites, you know, or HMV until they do their 3 for 30, and no doubt you'll see Last Action Hero popping up in it. But that's it for this one, folks. If you've enjoyed it, of course, give it a wee like and consider subscribing for future content. Big shout out as well to Gareth for prompting me to make this video. I've had a lot of fun doing it, Gareth, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. And cheers for the VHS copy of Last Action Hero. Remember, you can visit Gareth's channel as well, and it's definitely worth it, as I say, if you're an Arnie fan, to catch that February Arnie month. And lastly, what's your thoughts on Last Action Hero? Do you see it as a bit of an underrated gem, or do you think it deserved the panning it got back in 1993? And if you had any of the releases that I've covered, LaserDisc, VHS, DVD, whatever it may be, let me know in the comments below and which was your favourite. But thanks for watching. I've been Andy Electric Geek, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video.